Good morning. Welcome to the great state of Oklahoma. I'm so glad you've joined us here. I'm glad to have our friends from the south and our friends from the east, and I can assure you that Nate not only has a cot in my office, he has a name tag, he has a coat hanger. He spends a great deal of time in our office, and as he made the comment a minute ago, I have the great privilege and honor of chairing the Business and Commerce Committee for the state of Oklahoma. Now, what does that mean exactly? All economic policy that goes to the state of Oklahoma comes through our committee, which is a fantastic place to be. But it also means that all banking regulations and industry regulations that we deal with as a state come through our committee as well. So as a credit union man, it does me great good to my heart to have the bankers come on a regular basis to ask me for things. And I hope that, as we say in the Capitol building, sometimes the ranchers and the farmers can be friends, and sometimes we can't. So, we just have to work through that. Today I'm going to talk about tell you two stories. And I'll try to keep my remarks brief. It's very difficult for a statesman to keep his remarks brief. Usually, I was told I have 45 minutes, which is not true. So we'll try to condense these to about 5 minutes. But I want to tell you two stories. One, when we talk about passion, where does my passion for credit unions come from? In 1989, I had the great privilege of being a bat boy for the Tulsa Drillers. Now, if you are familiar with the Tulsa Drillers, they were a farm team at the time for the Texas Rangers, and I had the great privilege of being the bat boy for Sammy Sosa, Juan Gonzalez, Dean Alexander, some of the great names that brought Texas the championship later on in those years. And in 1989, I went down there and I applied for that job, and I got my first job, and my brother, who was working at a community college he was a security guard, I believe, he says to me, "Now, what you need to do, Dan, is you need to get yourself a bank account." I said, "Where do we do that?" He says, "The only place you do it is at TTCU, the credit union." So at the age of 12 or 13, my brother put me in the car, we drove down there, and he helped me open my first account at TTCU, the credit union. And so my relationships with credit unions now is coming almost to 30 years. I've had one institution. I've worked with one institution. I've had all my accounts at one institution. And it has been a great privilege. I remember distinctly one day, as I was coming in to make deposits, I was younger then, and I had forgotten that you aren't supposed to write a check for more money than you have in your account. I fixed that problem, Tim, if you're listening. And I was exactly short 10 cents. And I sat there at the teller, and I'm looking at the teller, and I said, "I don't have 10 cents. And she says, "Do you understand what you did wrong?" "Yes, ma'am, I understand what I did wrong." That was the most expensive hamburger I ever bought in my life. But it taught me a valuable lesson. It also taught me a lesson about grace. Because that particular teller took out of herself to give the 10 cents I needed to make sure that I did not overdraft my account. And I can assure you, in fact, I can promise you, that there are other institutions out there that would not have that same feeling of grace, that would look for the opportunity to charge you the extra fees that go with buying an expensive hamburger. As the time wore on, I came to a place where I was heading up a company called Homeland Federal Mortgage. Homeland Federal Mortgage was a company we started with 2 employees. We grew to 52 employees, $150 million. And I sat there with my father one day complaining about the federal regulations coming from Washington that every one of us feel. And he looked at me and he said, "Son, either you're a part of a solution or you are the problem." Let me say that again. Either you're a part of the solution or you are the problem. Thanks, Dad. That doesn't make me feel better about the regulations that were coming, nor about the impact that it had on our financial institutions, nor as it made me feel better about the processes by which today we have to live under the Dodd-Frank Act. But it set inside me a passion to make a change, to fix it. A few months later, I found myself in the opportunity to run for the state Senate, what turned out to be the Super Bowl of races. It was whoever won my race would determine who controlled the Senate for the first time in Oklahoma history. A 2.5-year battle, and $500,000 later, that was an expensive hamburger as well, we found ourselves the winner of the Senate District 37 race, and in a wonderful position to take control of the Senate. And the pro tem calls me one day and he says, now you have banking background, right? And I said, well, I'm a mortgage guy. Yeah. He says, well, you've just been appointed to the chairmanship of this committee. I know you've only been here 2 years, but you'll find where the bathrooms are. Good luck. And I walked into this committee knowing very little about all the economic structures that we deal with. But I knew that we could be part of a solution, or I could help promote the problem. 2 years later, the company that we had fought so hard to build, blood, sweat, and tears, faced insurmountable odds from the regulatory authorities in Washington, and we were forced to close our company. Now, let me tell you, this is the second part of the story that I think is important. I sat chairing a business and commerce committee talking about economic development, knowing full well what the burden of regulation does to business. And as we watched our assets leave the company, and as we sat there and calculated the hours that we had spent building this wonderful company, 52 employees, $150 million company, AAA rated, we just couldn't survive. It wasn't the banks that helped us. It wasn't the small lenders who helped put us back on our feet. It was the credit unions. It was the credit unions who looked and said, you have a skill, you have an ability, and we can use your services. Friends, we stand at the crossroads in America. It's a time in our history unlike any other where we have seen what big regulatory agencies can do. I recently was able to go to the D.C. March the Hill event and got to listen to the good chairman of the CFPB give his talk about how we were, in fact, credit unions and how, in fact, we were a part of their solution. But I can assure you, as we step across the boundaries and we look at the regulatory burden being placed on us by Dodd-Frank, as we see the massive amount of closures of financial institutions across our state and our country and the amount of costs associated with us complying with the regulation, people who are out there and in business trying to serve the public either have to charge a higher fee to do it, or they're not going to survive. Friends, I believe in credit unions not because my history, which is certainly part of it, not only because of the opportunities afforded me and my family, because I genuinely believe that credit unions are the solution to the problem that's facing financial services. A mission that says we care about the member and not the bottom line of the profit. We do care about profit, don't misunderstand me, but the mission's the member. How are we helping? How are we promoting? How are we changing their lives? How are we offering a product that someone else is not offering? How are we molding our industry to meet the demand of today? Friends, there's not someone else out there that has that mission. Most financial institutions I talk to are talking about the regulatory burden and the cost and how much they're going to have to raise their fees to meet the demand. Friends, we are uniquely qualified, we are uniquely positioned, and we have a unique opportunity. I dare say that in the midst of the war that we're fighting in Washington against the heavy burden of an overreaching government, we are also winning the war on the front lines with people. Credit unions are seeing massive growth in Oklahoma. Those people are going from somewhere, right? They're choosing a benefit structure that looks to their solution, that looks to their best interests, rather than the financial arrangements of years ago. It's an exciting time to be a part of the credit unions. Second story I'm going to tell you, and I will try to keep this brief. I want to share with you a story I had with a gentleman that was in my office. He was sitting in the Senate, my office in the Senate, and he came in. He's a small business owner. And he looked at me and he said, "Tell me, why am I the enemy?" I said, "You have to explain yourself." He says, "I went out and started a company. I went out and created this opportunity. I went out and did these things. And I'm being treated as if I'm the enemy through the regulatory agencies, through taxation, through all these things." He went through the list. And friends, I might suggest to you that he is not the enemy. We are not the enemy. We are the solution. We have purpose behind what we do because what we do is great. The purpose of looking out for the little man, the purpose of watching out for the financial interests of our members, the purpose of offering sound financial advice makes us the solution. I'd also suggest to you, because I believe in advocacy, but I believe that we don't win any of the football games we don't show up to play. When we show up to play football, we win because we have a better product, we have a better opportunity, we have a better philosophy, we have a better standard of excellence. And when we show up to play the football games, we're going to win. I know that my friends look at what's happening in Washington with the Dodd-Frank Act and all the costs that are associated with it. And we think to ourselves, how can we sustain? How can we continue? And my friend, I would suggest to you that in the coliseums of great debate across this country, those are the Capitol buildings, that's the Washington, D.C., I would suggest to you that in those coliseums of great debate, when we show up and we speak our minds, our voices are heard. I was fortunate to be able to have a private meeting recently with one of our U.S. senators where he shared with me an understanding of taxation that he hadn't understood before. Gave us an opportunity through relationship to be able to give him the true facts behind the issues and gave him an opportunity to change his mind. He understands that we're a part of the solution. Inside our Capitol building and down here on 23rd and Lincoln, while you're here, if you would like a historical tour, I'd be happy to arrange one for you. But inside there, we have Frank Phillips, who authored a painting. And I think of this painting often as I'm sitting there working on these bills that we read and go through. And it's a picture of World War I, and it's a young man who's kissing his wife goodbye. She's holding their child, and the grandfather is standing there next to them waving goodbye as the troops are marching on. And in each one of the conference rooms, to both the right and the left of the grand staircase, when you come in, the House has hearings and the Senate have hearings in these conference rooms, there is an angel standing there holding its arms like this over the names that are written on the wall. And the names on the wall are those people who sacrificed their lives from Oklahoma in World War I. And it reminds me of what a great mentor told me one time. We always stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. Whether we are creating legislation in the Capitol building, or we are creating new loan programs, or we are helping someone at the teller line fix their deposits, it doesn't really matter. We stand on the shoulders of those who came before us, and we pass a mantle to those who will come behind us. So for me, and my purpose in life, and being engaged with credit unions, is to leave us in better shape than which we came, and to pass a mantle to the future generations where they have a hope and an opportunity to believe. Thank you very much for having me today. I appreciate you. I appreciate you being in Oklahoma. Do please spend all of your money here. We would really appreciate that, as Nate said. Thank you. Enjoy the conference. Have a great day.